I want to talk about work folder 6 in the college reading and study guide class. I want you to continue reading with your narrative nonfiction. Find time to read that. Remember, you need to read 3 days of that week, and you need to read at least 15 minutes a day. Okay, so for a total of at least 45 minutes, that's the absolute minimum. So at least 3 days a week, and then every time you read, you need to read at least 15 minutes. So if you just do the bare minimum, you'll get 45, but I'm hoping you'll get more than that. What I don't want is for you to read 5 minutes on one day, 10 minutes on the other, and try to read like 30 minutes on the third day. Yeah, I know that does equal 45, but it doesn't build habit. It doesn't build habit. And I want you to kind of clear things away. I want you to read, and again, remember that you're reading. You're trying to learn how the information is presented in the page. You're learning not just the content, hopefully, but you're learning writing style. You're learning things like diction use, punctuation, the way phrases are crafted. Those will help you become better in your literacy. And by extension, your literacy is going to help you in arenas of evaluation like you find yourself in the college classroom, where if you think about it, it really is about literacy, because you might be learning, well, a lot of it is, at least, because you might be learning something, say, in biology, but then how do you give it back? If you have to give it back in a presentation, you're using words to do that. You're learning which words to include, which to exclude. You're learning about how to line up the thoughts. So even if you're learning a skill set that doesn't look like it's involving literacy, it probably is at some point. And I find that a lot of college level assessment is based on how well you use words. Sometimes, unfortunately, this can be abused, and you have some uh, you know uh, you know high schooler or something figuring this out early on, and so they learn how to write or talk in a way that sounds like they know what they're saying, right? Because of the way they're using phrases and diction and all that. And so they can actually maybe not read something, but they know how to like talk about it in class so it looks like they've read it, and the teacher maybe is not, you know, ready to address that, or really is fooled or whatever, and so they get away with it. Well, the only good thing I can say about any of that is at least that student is recognizing the power of literacy in today's educational pathways. The better you sound, the better you talk, the better you write, people are automatically going to think you're smarter across the board, and you will get better grades. I really do believe that. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad. I think that's not really a good thing, but um, so that's why I'm having you do the nonfiction narrative. All right. And it's also my conviction, my utter belief, that if you keep on reading these types of books for the rest of your life, um, yeah, sure, the first 2 years might be tough, but then you get into a rhythm, you realize how you're growing. 10 years later, you're going to be at a certain spot that's going to be incredible for your personal growth. Well, anyway, this is what I want you to do besides continuing on with the narrative nonfiction. I'm going to go ahead and let us take a week off from the textbook this week, so that if any of you have outstanding work from the last couple of weeks concerning textbook chapters, catch up now. Okay, use this time to go back and to pick a chapter and do what I asked you to do in work folder 4 or 5 or whatever, work folder 6. Get it done now. Get it off your plate. Okay. Um, you'd open up the previous work folder to do it. But if you have any work that you still need to do from any of those other folders, I'm going to give you some time this week to do it. So we're not going to do any textbook work for this week. I do want you to continue reading the nonfiction narrative. And then I also want you to do something for me. Okay. I want you to write me a short paragraph. It has to have at least 250 words. I want a word count at the bottom. Okay. Let me just write this down. So there'll be an assignment that you have to open up in this work folder and type it in or copy and paste it in, and be sure at the bottom you have just something as simple as word count equals 275 or whatever. The minimum is 250. I would always go a little over that, because if you give me exactly 250, you allow me to think that you finished really around 2:30 and then you were just scrambling by padding your work to get to 2:50. Now, I might be incorrect about that, but that's sometimes how your professor might think when you barely make it across the minimum word count. But anyway, 250 words. I want you to do something for me. Let me describe it first, and then your writing will be for you to give me information as it pertains to you. Okay. So there are extracurricular influences outside of college, outside of school that can affect your performance. It could be illness. It could be lack of sleep. Maybe you have a hard time sleeping, or you're not careful to portion out a proper amount of sleep. It could be bad eating. You're never really getting the type of energy you need. You're eating maybe something that gives you some sort of rush of energy and then a quick drop and sort of an exhausted feeling for 2 hours afterward. And so sometimes it's as simple as just eating better, right? So maybe it's lack of sleep. Maybe you're sleeping okay, but you're not eating right. There could be all sorts of stressors, right? Maybe a job situation that is very um, troubling to you for whatever reason. Maybe the work isn't the right type of work you want to be doing, or you don't feel comfortable with your coworkers, or maybe you're in a situation where you don't think it's fair. You're going through something unfair at work, and it's bothering you. Maybe you're just working too much. You see what I'm saying? And you're trying to juggle too many things. So trying to do too many things at once would be a sort of external situation that can affect your schoolwork, right? Maybe it's unfortunately it might be a family issue where your family at this point is going through something. It could be there could be health issues. Maybe you've had some health issues, not anything chronic or something like not sleeping right, but just getting really sick for a couple weeks, and that can just have a snowball effect in terms of how it grows as a burden on you. Okay, so you're sick for a couple weeks, you don't go to work for a week, you take a cut in pay maybe for that week. I don't know, but then you're behind in your studies, so when you come back, catching up is so stressful. There could be all these things involved in just being sick, right? So I want you to think. Money could be an issue. Maybe you just don't have enough money to buy that textbook, right? And that means that you're trying to kind of make it through the class, but you don't have the right tools, and that can be so frustrating. How do you get the money? How do you do that? So, um, what I want you to what I want you to do for me this week is I don't want you to share something you're not going to be comfortable sharing. And by the way, this is just going to be between you and me. But would you write me 250 words minimum, paragraph or two, maybe kind of analyzing your own life and pointing out a few factors that you feel aren't aren't necessarily part of school, but they have been affecting your school performance. And it could be other things too that you might not want to mention. For example, mental health. Maybe you've been struggling a lot with anxiety or some other thing that you just can't shake up here. And you don't necessarily want to write about that. Okay, you can do a couple things. You can maybe look for something else to write on, or you can write about it in very general terms if you want to. Um, if you do find yourself in a particular situation where you don't know what else to write on, but the thing that's really affecting your school performance is not something you want to share, then why don't you send me an email and just say, is there something else I can do for this credit, and I'll think of something. But I would really like, if you're comfortable with it, I would like to know, and I think it would help you as well to write it out, right? And try to be as specific as possible. But I also understand if it's a general situation. For example, I really, really have a hard time personally, Matt Horn. I have a hard time doing any sort of good work, any sort of consistent work, in a project that I find I don't believe it, in the sense of I don't really think it's important, or I struggle to find its meaning, in the big picture, if you will. So I have a trouble committing to things, that I just feel like at the end of the day, the question, what's the point, has still not been answered. So for me, that's still a very real question for this thing I'm doing, and it affects my quality of work. It affects how I interact with other workers, and I really don't know how to get past that. So I've constantly struggled with that, constantly, for a long time, and I know it affects things. Like if I had to become a student in today's modern classroom, I would be making very poor grades in at least half of my classes. Um, just because of lack of commitment. I don't really want to connect with it. I don't really feel like it's important. And, I wouldn't necessarily give specific examples. I don't necessarily have, well, I guess I do, but, well, okay, I'll share something with you. I feel like I'm having a very, very hard time connecting with the type of schooling that my children are going through. And so if you wanted to judge me on my, performance as a involved parent, and you were going to gauge the involvement in just how active I was in my kids' schooling, like making them do homework and things like that, you know, and you had some sort of rubric and grading system, and you said you're going to get a grade for this, you need to do a really good job. What's stopping you from being a, this sort of involved parent? I would say, well, I really don't want to make my kids do homework because I would rather spend time with them laughing and building things and challenging them with creative situations that encourages them to respectfully test authority and to try to think of new ways of solving something. I really have no interest in having my kid involved in a school situation where they sit and they read a chapter from a textbook and they try to learn, what the textbook is saying. I would much, if you're learning history, I would much rather listen to an audiobook with them about, say, World War II. I can think of some incredible audiobooks that once you get started, I mean, they really grab you. And, as we're listening to an audiobook, we might be building something in our shop or, basement or on the table here, some sort of craft project that we want to build, like a model or work with Legos or something. But see, that stuff you can do with your hands while you listen, right? Now that seems like it's a homeschooling situation, and I agree, but I mean that to me seems much more potentially beneficial in the long run than having my kids sit for, you know, 3 or 4 hours trying to take notes in an antiquated school system. Antiquated because they don't seem to be really invested in innovating in terms of how to figure out what needs to be learned, what doesn't need to be learned now, what are some best ways to do this, how can we customize education, things like that. So yeah, no, I mean, I think it's an embarrassment to the school system when you have a fifth grader coloring pictures of knights because they're studying medieval history, and you're coloring in a coloring book. That's no, that's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. So I actually would write notes to the teacher saying I decided not to let my kid do this homework because I don't think it's worth doing. Didn't make me very popular with the teacher, and I'm afraid that I would get an F or a D if you were to consider, hey, is Horn really involved with his schooling? I care a lot about genuine education, but not about that. So I just can't really get involved with it in any real way because I don't think it's right. Um, so I know that that's a block for me when it comes to like getting involved in the middle schools and the high schools that are around here. I'm like, you guys are not really doing this the right way. I don't think you are. So I'm not really going to buy into it. And so I would just admit to you that for me, in terms of like doing that with my kids, it wouldn't be because I'm not sleeping. It's because I'm not, I'm sad or I'm, no. It's just because I don't believe in it. So, that's kind of, How do you get past that? And that's a very good question. How do you get past that? I don't know, but at least I recognize that that's the problem. You know what I'm saying? So that's maybe how I would respond to that in that scenario. Okay, and just I'm just looking for factors outside of school in your life that are actually influencing how you are performing in school. And if you are going to go through this pathway, if you're going to stay enrolled and try to earn that degree, you've given up some of your rights in the sense of you're not really going to like be able to negotiate with your teachers or your department chair or whatever for a new way to do education. I mean, this is it. These teachers, some of them have been doing it this way for decades, and they're not going to listen to you as you ask them to politely change their syllabus or to get rid of the syllabus and just do things differently. You as an individual student have very little leverage at this point as to how your education process is going to look. And I think if you understand that going in, it's a little better, because then you have to realize you kind of have to be in a passive role here. You just kind of have to endure it, but that doesn't mean you have to like affirm it or embrace it. Maybe it's not working for you, and you know why, and you want to talk about that. So, um, what are some of those? I guess what I mean with all of that is that you are going to have to perform a certain way. You're going to have to type that work out. You're going to have to submit it online. You're going to have to get it in on time. You're going to have to meet the basic requirements of whatever assignment it is for whatever teacher you're working for. You're going to have to read those pages in the textbook. You're going to have to take that test or whatever, right? So those things are set for you, and you're going to be evaluated on how you perform in that. So I don't necessarily like that process, but I think it's beyond any of our power at this point right now to change that for you. So the question is, what is maybe what might be some external factors that are kind of slowing you down from just acing all of that? All right. Now, I don't want to say acing it is in itself a virtue, but you are getting grades that are going on your transcript, right? So you want to try to get some good grades. I understand that. And so that's why I'm asking you, what are some of these influences that might be stopping you? So, all right, listen, I think that's a pretty good idea of what I want you to do this week. Obviously, I want you to watch this video. So you're going to have to affirm that you watched the video. Um, then you'll need to affirm that you're doing reading, and then in your nonfiction narrative. Then, I want you to catch up if you have any outstanding work. Outstanding, that means you haven't turned it in yet. It's late. I'm not going to count off, but just get it in. Go back to those work folders, get it in, and then I want you to write this paragraph or two. Okay, it doesn't have to be a beautiful essay, but I would like a paragraph or two, at least total. Right, when you add everything up, you're at least 250 words, thinking and sort of saying possibly these are some external factors that are affecting me and hurting my performance in school. All right, thanks for watching.